All right, there's wind shear. Autopilot's coming off. Going toga power.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I've turned on the Fasten Seatbelt sign because, let's be honest, I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing up here.
All right, go ahead, disconnect that autopilot by pushing that red button right there on your thumb twice.
You see, I've come to this simulator in Atlanta, Georgia, to face my fear of flying, and specifically my fear of flying through turbulence. So for the next hour, I want to pull back the curtain on what causes turbulence.
It's always nice to have real-time data, which is harder to get sometimes with turbulence.
How planes are designed to withstand it.
The amount that these can actually flex before they deform is extreme.
How pilots train to navigate through it.
If the winds are blowing this way, we may not want to go to the left of the course because we'll get a lot of that spill off from the turbulence blowing downwind, so we might take an upwind deviation.
And even how I can manage my anxiety over turbulence.
So you want me to think of someone who's calming today? Well, since my wife is probably watching this, I'll think of her.
I usually suggest people don't do that.
And maybe, just maybe, we can land this plane together. So please take your seats because it's about to be a bumpy ride.
Mellow right back there.
I grew up in South Ozone Park, about 5 minutes from New York's JFK Airport. It's here where I started a love-hate relationship with flying. As a child, sometimes I would walk outside, sit on the stoop, and just look right down 111th Avenue here. We're just a few miles away from JFK Airport, and all of the planes would line up in the sky before they would land moments later. That fascination also comes with some fear. It's images just like that creep into my mind every single time I'm on my way to the airport. They usually happen just before I reach the terminal. Those butterflies in my stomach, my anxiety, all over turbulence.
We can tell as passengers are boarding who's the anxious ones. So we might identify those people, and if we know, because we get briefed from the flight deck before every flight that tells us what the turbulence is going to look like.
Once I check in, the first thing I do is I go to the website, turbulenceforecast.com. I take a look at all of the pilot reports because with turbulence, pilots often report the turbulence all around the country. Because sometimes with turbulence, you can't see it with radar, if it's clear air turbulence, for example. So I like to do it just to give myself peace of mind. And I also like to know how much turbulence are we going to see. Is it going to be light? Is it going to be moderate? Or is it going to be severe? Has turbulence ever caused a plane to crash? I asked an expert, United Airlines Chief Pilot Rob Biddle.
Turbulence has not caused an airplane to crash. Airplanes are built very sturdily. In fact, there's a lot of countermeasures built into the engineering of an airplane. Much like a car has different things to make a smooth ride on a bumpy road, airplanes have so many different parts to it that's built into the aircraft to be able to deal and safely handle turbulence.
But that doesn't mean that turbulence isn't dangerous. In July of 2010, 30 people were injured when a United Airlines plane headed to Los Angeles hit severe turbulence.
The person behind me, he actually flew up, and then he landed like kind of across the aisle onto somebody else's head.
It was scary, crazy, and I'm just glad to be home right now. The only thing that got injured was my wine glass that nailed the ceiling.
One person was critically injured. The plane was forced to make an unexpected landing in Denver. The power of Mother Nature was captured again in February of 2019. As a Delta Connection plane made its way to Seattle, the winds outside the plane were so powerful that it sent this drink cart flying. Cups, snacks, and drinks and bottled water all littered the aisle as shocked passengers came to grips with what had just happened. Several people, including a flight attendant, were injured after the plane encountered severe turbulence. But to understand natural turbulence and what causes it, we have to first understand how a plane flies. So the wings of an airplane are designed to split the airflow created by the engines pushing the jet through an air mass. It creates a pressure difference above and below the wing. This difference creates an upward force. It's called lift. And when lift is greater than gravity, the plane goes up. When it's equal, the plane cruises and you're on a smooth ride. Turbulence comes when there's a disruption in that balance. Simply put, turbulence is just a change in wind speed and wind direction over a surface, like an airplane. Pilots will rank turbulence based on its intensity. Severe turbulence can cause a plane to shake violently, causing injuries.
Okay. So what kind of turbulence is this?
This is light turbulence.
This is light turbulence right now, and this is all because
Probably
of
light
the
chop.
This is all because of the storm that's in front of us right now.
It very well could be some blow off from that already, depending on the winds. It could just be atmospheric instability, which a lot of times you're right. It's part of that's why thunderstorms form, because it's unstable. Air traffic control here would hopefully be able to give us a left or right deviation from this weather. And possibly a climb. We're only at 10,000 feet, so we'd ask for a higher altitude and ask for a deviation left or right, of course. And a lot of times, Jason, if the winds are blowing this way, we may not want to go to the left of the course because we'll get a lot of that spill off from the turbulence blowing downwind, so we might take an upwind deviation versus if all things are equal.
Inside one of United Flight simulators in Denver, we got a first-hand look at what happens in the cockpit during turbulence. In our first simulation, we flew close to a thunderstorm. Those tall clouds and winds are often what's behind what many pilots refer to as thermal or convective turbulence.
Convective turbulence is where you have uneven heating of the surfaces of the Earth, and as those surfaces heat unevenly, they cause things like thunderstorms as they interact with moisture.
The storms naturally change the airflow, disrupting the balance and causing the plane to shake.
And you're going to try to follow this flight vector, and I'll tell you, we're 2,000 feet above the ground climbing, and we're just going to fly this until we get out of the wind shear. And yep, there we are. It looks like we're coming out of it. And once we figure out that we've recovered, we can go ahead, get a new altitude cleared from air traffic control.
The uneven heating of the Earth's surface tends to happen during the day. That's why pilots suggest if you want to avoid the biggest bumps, to try flying either at night or earlier in the day. United's policy is to avoid flying through any storms unless it's absolutely necessary. Thankfully, as we navigate away from the thunderstorm, the turbulence subsides in our simulation.
And you felt the turbulence that was associated with that. You're doing great. There you go.
All of United's pilots have access to data that displays upcoming turbulence before the plane encounters it. But there's another type of turbulence we have to be on alert for. It's the type of turbulence pilots admit tends to surprise them.
Clear air turbulence has always been a problem. Obviously thunderstorms, we can see it, we know it's going to be turbulent, we avoid it, we can see it on our radar.
It's a problem because clear air turbulence can't be seen by the eye like thermal turbulence. Clear air turbulence occurs when there is a change in the airflow or jet stream.
Just because you have wind currents that are in the air, jet streams that change directions unexpectedly, and those aren't generally characterized by clouds, and you just fly through those, and it's not unlike the ocean over the surface of the Earth. As the ocean travels and moves, you see waves, you see crests of those waves, and that's really the same thing that's happening in the atmosphere. You just can't see it quite as readily as you can on the ocean.
And then there's mechanical turbulence. Now, that doesn't mean it's caused by machines. It's created by the topography of what's on the ground, whether it's man-made or otherwise, like mountains.
Here in beautiful Denver, we have a bunch of mountains out here, and mechanical turbulence is as air flows past an object. It could be a mountain, it could be a building, a bunch of buildings. It creates a rippling effect. You know, much like you're standing on the side of a river and you watch the current go over the rocks, on the leeward side, on the downriver side, you see an eddy, and you see a bunch of white water on the backside of a rock. Much like here in Denver, as winds move from the west to the east, it creates a little bit of eddy over here in the eastern side of the mountains. That's why sometimes it's a little turbulent here in Denver.
Turbulence is part of everyday flying. And passengers experience it pretty much every flight in some degree. And I feel so safe because I know what the pilots go through and what the flight crew does. I feel very confident, very assured, and very safe.
No fear.
Honestly, no fear.
No fear? Well, this takes me back to the cockpit. If I'm gonna get over my fear of turbulence, I'm gonna have to land this plane no matter how bumpy the ride is.
And then it's gonna do a countdown like 50, 40, 30, 20. That's when we wanna start thinking about what's called flaring.
Okay.
And you're gonna look at the end of the runway and you're just gonna take the stick and it's just a barely pull back. Try to pull back just a little bit, like 3 degrees per second is what we call it. So it's just like that.
Just like that, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll walk through it, okay?
Okay, I'll try not to crash the plane. Coming up, I'm gonna head out to Seattle where Boeing manufactures planes. They're gonna show me the latest technology used to make airplanes more adaptable to turbulence.
We design our planes to withstand so much more structural pressure and bumps than the turbulence that we experience.
Then I'm going to head to Connecticut to speak to a former pilot who counsels passengers on how to confront their fear of flying.
There's more to it than just being able to cognitively deal with what happens in an airplane. A lot of stuff that happens is emotional.
There would be fearing of crashing and dying in an airplane crash.
Then to the meteorology department at Delta Airlines to look at how they forecast weather for their flights.
Sometimes there's not a best ride. Sometimes it's just bumpy.
And finally, it'll be my chance to take the controls in the cockpit myself in a simulation to see if I can indeed land a plane in turbulence. The irony in all of this means 4 more flights.
Inside the state-of-the-art studio.
We're streaming 24/7 to show you what's happening in real time.
When storms hit, more people watch Fox Weather.
Because when you need reliable information,
you look to the best. And nobody has you covered like Fox Weather.
Because where else could you learn moves like this?
Keep telling yourself that.
Precise, personal, powerful.
From across the country
to just around the corner.
Fox Weather. Stream live now on your favorite device.
I'm gonna try and overcome my fear of turbulence by landing a plane. And don't worry, it's not the real thing. It's a flight simulator. But first I'm gonna head out to Seattle, where the modern era of aviation was born. If you've ever flown in the United States, it likely was aboard a Boeing plane. The company has manufactured nearly 190,000 planes over the last 100 years. And it all would not have been possible without a flight on July the 4th, 1915 on Lake Washington. Aviation pioneers Bill Boeing and George Westervelt decided to fly with a barnstormer to honor our nation's independence.
Bill Boeing went first. The pilot revved the engine, the craft raced across Lake Washington, then lifted off into the air. Sitting on the lower wing of the plane, Boeing's feet were braced against footrests, his hands gripping the edge of the wing. There were no seatbelts. William Boeing was thrilled by the experience.
After their July 4th flight, Boeing and Westervelt committed to creating a better airplane. It would be their ingenuity that would lead to what you and I see every day in the sky. For the last 11 years, it's been Boeing employees like Brenna Weinoff who have been analyzing and developing new ways to make your flight a smoother and more enjoyable ride. She was one of the first employees I met during my tour of Boeing's Customer Experience Center near Seattle and their massive manufacturing facility in Everett, Washington.
Boeing has been designing airplane cabins since the dawn of the jet age, but technically even before that, since the early 1930s. The 307 Stratoliner was introduced in that time frame, and that was the first airplane to be equipped with a pressurized cabin. And with a pressurized cabin, that airplane was actually able to cruise above weather disturbances at an altitude above all of those additional pops that were created flying through clouds, rain, etc. And so that was really our first step or foray into mitigating that turbulence effect on our passengers.
Even when your plane is flying at these higher altitudes, it may still encounter turbulence. But it doesn't mean that you're in any danger as long as you're strapped in, according to Ryan Pettit. He's an associate technical fellow of flight controls at Boeing. He's an expert at what it takes to control an airplane during turbulence.
The airplane is designed to withstand much more than you're experiencing on that flight. So the airplane itself is going to make it through. It's still uncomfortable at the end of the day. You know, even if the airplane is safe, that's disconcerting, it's fatiguing.
At Boeing's manufacturing facility in Everett, Washington, I get a first-hand look at how the 777 model planes are designed, where we can see how birds may hold the secret to minimizing or eliminating turbulence.
Obviously, the wings share a lot in common and a lot differently with birds, but we try to emulate that. The tail feathers, similar to the tail that you might see on a bird. So, you know, a lot of this in a way kind of emulates nature and the things that work. Obviously, things like flapping the wing, that's not something that we're doing, right? We're not as sophisticated as a bird, so we use something like a jet engine on there.
Scientists at Cornell University found magnificent golden eagles use rough air to their advantage. The air speeds up the beat of their wings and allows them to navigate turbulence. Your plane is already designed to counteract those wind gusts. Like a bird, a plane's wings are designed to move.
You look out the window, you see the wing moving, you see the engines as well will move quite a bit if anyone ever looks out and notices that. That's just a natural part of the motion of the airplane. It's just, it's designed to be able to flex.
You can see this in video I took aboard a flight recently. The wings are designed to bend as they encounter turbulent air, and other parts of the plane are flexible as well.
Sometimes if you look down the airplane, you can actually see the bending of the fuselage, and that's perfectly normal as well. So this thing, you can imagine, you know, the ends might bend up and down, just like if you had a yardstick and kind of did one of these and you'd see it bend. The fuselage can do the same thing, and that's just perfectly normal for the structure to do that. So when you see that, that one can be disconcerting too if you look down and you realize, hey, that's moving differently than I'm moving. It's perfectly normal and it's okay, and that's just what happens when the airplane gets shaken up by the turbulence.
Now, is it true the bigger the plane, the better it can handle turbulence?
To some extent, but the air mass is so dynamic and fluid that every airplane's going to move around. A larger, heavier, higher inertia airplane may move a little bit less, but they're all subject to this.
Your plane is equipped with multiple computer systems that detect and minimize turbulence. Without those systems, your flight might feel more like a roller coaster, and no one wants that. The most obvious turbulence detection equipment is something many people overlook as they board their planes because of how small it is. It looks like a porcupine, and its primary job is to measure changes in airspeed.
As you change the speed over it by a gust, you know, it's not going to make the airplane fall out of the sky, but it is going to change the lift, and it's going to make the airplane want to move up and down like this and give you that kind of heaving motion. And so we can move surfaces to also kind of counteract that, almost like noise canceling in a sense, where the gust wants to move the airplane up, and so we can counter that, or if it wants to throw you down, we can counter that to some extent, and that all helps improve your ride going side to side as well as up and down.
Boeing refers to this as a vertical gust suppression system.
It basically minimizes the motion of the airplane going up and down. And that is meant to basically prevent any susceptibility to motion sickness.
But wind can also hit a plane's tail, moving it from right to left or from left to right. You may sometimes feel this as you're taking off as the plane moves side to side. There's another system designed to stop this from impacting your flight.
The sensation that you get side to side at lower frequencies is predominantly due to the airplane kind of rotating like this. It gets hit by a gust from the side, say, and you can imagine like a weather vane just turns into the wind. Well, you got this tail back here that's designed to do that aerodynamically. Well, you get by the gust, the airplane's going to want to turn into the wind, and that can give you, kind of throw you side to side. And so one of the things that we do is we actually have on the 777, 87, 777X, there's sensors that are mounted in the tail here that measure the gust on the tail, and then they move the rudder, which is this big surface back here. It's a very large and powerful surface that can resist that motion. And so we can actually kind of initially when you get hit by that gust, we can move the rudder to resist that motion that's going to throw you to the side, and then control the rate at which the airplane rotates kind of this way in this axis.
Without these systems in place, there would likely be more people suffering from motion sickness.
There's countless thousands and millions of hours and blood, sweat, and tears and engineering analysis that goes into making this strong and safe that you're not seeing.
Pilots always try to avoid thunderstorms, but sometimes they have no choice but to fly right through them. The good news is planes are designed to handle a direct lightning strike.
We have to show by design that that electrical energy will be dissipated through the structure and it won't damage the system, it won't have any safety critical effects on the system. So, well, that could be particularly exciting to see that in an aircraft if you do see it. It does happen from time to time, and the airplanes are safe and they're designed to withstand that and continue to safe flight.
But it's not just what's on the outside of your plane that's designed to make it a lot more comfortable during turbulent flights. It's also the way that these seats were created. They're designed to minimize any sort of movement during a turbulent flight.
So all of our airplanes are tested to what we call 16 G's of force. So that is 16 times the force of gravity that we feel walking around as people on this beautiful blue marble. And that means that if the airplane were to encounter 16 G's of force, this airplane seat isn't going to be going anywhere. It is completely secure and strapped down to this airplane. It is staying put.
So that means when I'm moving around during a turbulent flight, my seat's not moving at all.
Absolutely not. And that's why they tell you to buckle up your seatbelt, because they know that you're going to be safe and secure in that seat.
If the pilot asks you to put on your seatbelt, put on your seatbelt. That's the biggest cause of injuries, is people moving around the cabin in turbulence and falling down, you know, whatever it is. So stay in your seat as much as you can.
On a lot of the newer planes, you may notice that the lighting looks brighter and matches the airline's brand colors. That's intentional. Do you think that lighting impacts how much the passenger may feel a turbulent flight?
Lighting, I can't speak to specific motion. The body feels what it feels, that's for sure. But lighting has a huge impact on the passenger experience, and there is a litany of research out there that proves it. There's also lighting that can influence circadian rhythm if you get it at the right amount of time and at the right frequency. Certain colors and gradients are used for different reasons. They help the body calm down, rest. They excite or awaken the body, or they make certain things look appetizing, say during meal service. So there are lots of different purposes for color and light in the cabin, and we're incredibly intentional with how we use that.
Whether it's the interior lighting, seat design, or gust suppression systems, Boeing says it has one goal.
Our number one priority at Boeing is to create airplanes that are safe for people, for cabin crew members, passengers, whether that's on the ground or in the air.
So that begs the question, Ryan, will one day we get to a point where turbulence is a complete thing of the past?
I'd love it if that was the case. I don't think I can say that with complete confidence. I think that we will continue to move in a direction of doing as much as we can to detect that turbulence and route around it. Airspace, air traffic management is complex. You know, the more and more we fly and the more airplanes that are in the air, you know, there's only so much airspace for the airplanes to share. So to the extent that we possibly can, we'll continue to develop systems to maximize the ability of the pilot to go around the turbulence.
Coming up, if we can't eliminate turbulence, how do we avoid it?
Sometimes there's not a best ride. Sometimes it's just bumpy. On those nights, our job is to just find the best area to fly.
It was a bad flight. For 10 years, I did not fly because of that fear.
But if you do want to fly, we can fix it.
Fox Weather is Hurricane HQ.
This one is something we have to watch.
America's weather team is prepared to keep you prepared.
We have high confidence in the forecast.
Braving the elements so you don't have to.
I just want to show you the power of this wind right now.
This season, you need America's weather team. Precise, personal, powerful. For every critical moment, stay with Hurricane HQ.
Delta pilots have a lot of help to navigate turbulence. Sometimes it's thousands of miles away, centered in Atlanta, and passengers may never see it. Inside Delta Airlines Atlanta headquarters, this team is tasked with one mission: to make your next flight a smooth and safe one.
The OCC is the Operations Customer Center, and you have over 800 employees in this building, from maintenance to dispatchers like myself, to pilots are in here, flight attendant representatives.
That's right, nearly 800 people are working 24/7 to ensure your flight lands safely and on time. Before a pilot enters the cockpit, Delta's meteorologists are hard at work trying to figure out where the most turbulent air is and which areas could see the next storm that could delay or cancel your trip.
If you go just down to the basic definition of turbulence, it's anywhere where the winds have a change in speed or direction.
Warren Weston is Delta Airlines' lead meteorologist. He says sometimes figuring out where turbulence is easy.
The atmosphere is like a fluid, and so it's like being in a swimming pool and moving your arm through the water really fast. Of course, you're going to get a big rushing wave. The same thing in the atmosphere when you have a front moving really fast. All that air is being shoved out, and it can be very turbulent. So anytime we have a strong or a fast-moving frontal system, or a sharp trough where you've got a rapid change in direction of the winds through the trough, those are all areas where you're pretty much guaranteed to have turbulence.
But other times, finding clear air turbulence can be challenging because it can happen when the wind shifts. Sometimes the computers that meteorologists use will only be able to recognize turbulence after they encounter it, and that's when they issue a pilot report.
So today we're looking at the various pilot reports around the country. You can tell all of these little black dots indicate to us that there's been a smooth ride report. And so these are where the pilots are reporting that they've got good rides. On each aircraft, we are equipped with what are called EDR sensors, and they track the movement of the plane.
Those sensors can help other pilots and Warren figure out how severe the turbulence might be on your next trip. And despite being a meteorologist for over a decade, Warren admits he can't always predict where turbulence may pop up because of a lack of weather stations in some parts of the world, including over oceans.
There's certain areas of the world where you just don't have the data. You just don't have weather data. You don't have the model coverage. We're kind of spoiled forecasting for the U.S. because we've got so many different models and high-resolution models and really good observations.
On the day we were visiting, Warren and fellow meteorologists had already put out a warning about what was happening in Europe.
Today it looks like it's a bumpy ride over the Atlantic Ocean.
So there's just some turbulence. There's pretty much always turbulence out across the ocean somewhere. These are today's routes. These are like little highways in the sky that all the planes typically, they route around these. So we're watching areas of mountain waves as well. Sometimes we deal with mountain waves over Greenland or the Rockies, the Alps. We're watching areas of mountain waves, and we can avoid these. This is a mountain wave today over southern Greenland. And so all of our flights will be routed either north or south of that so that they don't find themselves in any mountain wave turbulence.
Mountain waves, also known as mechanical turbulence, occur when air is forced to go around an object like a mountain or even a tall building. When the air is pushed to the other side, it can produce really strong wind gusts or eddies, making the air really turbulent. Not only can it damage a plane, but it can result in pilots losing control. Fortunately, on the day that we visited, all of Delta's planes landed safely.
Anytime we're making high impact forecasts, those are always stressful. If you have a large system moving across the country and you might have turbulence over a 1,000-mile area where sometimes there's not a best ride. Sometimes it's just bumpy. And so on those nights, our job is to just find the best area to fly.
One of those days was back in September of 2017. As Hurricane Irma was barreling towards Puerto Rico, other planes heading towards the island turned back around. Delta's dispatchers, meteorologists, and pilots worked closely together to fly through a narrow band of rain to get the plane safely on the ground in San Juan, Puerto Rico. As the plane lands, the winds were picking up, making things a bit bumpy on approach.
The outer bands had already moved through San Juan, and it was clear on satellite that we had a nice break in the weather. It was perfectly safe to come in and land and reload and take off again.
Delta Flight 302 had just minutes to deplane on that September day. The passengers successfully got off the plane. As Irma inched closer by the second, new passengers quickly got on board, and the plane managed to take off bound for New York City.
From a meteorological perspective, there wasn't really anything that much different that day because you're doing what we do every day, which is timing out the weather. Everybody felt like it was a safe operation, and it worked in our advantage that day.
Once Warren is done compiling his report, he's ready to have a conversation with one of Delta's flight supervisors.
I'm doing a route today from Atlanta to Charles de Gaulle. I'm looking at track Y. What do you think about that? Because I see a lot of forecast turbulence out here in the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, yeah, so track Y should be good today. Most of the turbulence is below 35,000, and so as long as you're high, you should be able to go over everything, and it should be fine.
Aaron Wehrman's primary job is to work with Air Traffic Control, or ATC, and Delta's pilots to determine how you're going to get to your destination. She'll look at everything from turbulence reports, weather, and even review other pilot reports of turbulence before she gives the okay to your pilot to take off.
ATC has preferred routes. They're called tracks, and they're like highways in the sky. We have ones going westbound, and we have tracks going eastbound. Now today, going eastbound, like say I'm going to Charles de Gaulle, I see a lot of turbulence plots that my meteorologists have set up forecast-wise, and I want to avoid those. And what they'll do is they'll put them at specific altitudes. So like this one right here, is from 260 to 310, and that's light to moderate turbulence. Now as a passenger, you do not want to be in light to moderate turbulence. It's not that it's dangerous, it's just an annoyance, it's a disturbance. It's where your cup is sitting on your tray and it's wiggling back and forth and you're having to hold it. And so I want to avoid that for passenger comfort, and so I might choose and create a user preferred route that goes south of this turbulence area. While it's not on the highway system of the North Atlantic tracks, it is a allowed route and it will avoid the turbulence.
And when you say 310, that's 31,000 feet?
Okay. Flight level 310 is 31,000 feet. That is correct.
Okay.
Aaron says some seasons can be more challenging than others, which is why she's always keeping an eye on the weather.
Here in the U.S., we have ATC set routes. Preferred routes is what Air Traffic Control wants you on. But you can customize those to deviate around weather. So I will do that to avoid thunderstorms, obviously. Domestically in the summer, we have thunderstorms that can go all the way from Lake Michigan down to the Gulf of Mexico and extend that entire line. And how do you get around that? You get around that by creating your own customized routes.
So you like days like today?
We love days like today. It's a good ride for everybody.
Coming up, if you have a fear of turbulence, I'm going to show you what you can do about overcoming it.
For 10 years, I did not fly.
It's not about being able to control things, but if you do want to fly, we can fix it.
And later, I get my turn in the cockpit.
So much harder than I thought.
All right, I'm going to steer on the ground for you. Nice job.
Sorry.
Nice job.
Oopsie.
Hello, Fox Weather users. I'm Janice Dean. The Fox Weather app is changing the game with custom features you've got to take advantage of. I'm here to guide you through these features so you can get the most out of your Fox Weather experience. Let me tell you about my favorite feature on the Fox Weather app, Future View. Fox Future View is a feature you can't find anywhere else. With a few simple steps, Future View allows you to track the weather in advance of any big events you have planned for the year. Going on vacation? Booking your honeymoon? Maybe a destination wedding or party? This is the perfect tool to help you plan ahead. Get a future forecast anywhere in the world, nearly a year in advance. Here's how it works. Hit the Plan tab at the bottom of your screen. Then hit Create Event. Give it a name. Let's say Spring Break Trip. Then add a location, maybe to Miami. Pick a start and end date. Add a category, and turn on notifications so we can alert you as your event gets closer. Then click Create. That's it. Give it a try now. This is just one of many great features the Fox Weather app provides to you. This app is full of all kinds of great customizable tools. So dive in and make the Fox Weather app your very own. Fox Weather, precise, personal, powerful.
So the fear obviously would be, can this plane withstand a thunderstorm? Can it withstand all these movements, this turbulence? There's so many moving parts. Is it all going to stay together? And ultimately, yes, it would be fearing of crashing and dying in an airplane crash.
For Joe Spatola, going to Disney World was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But what happened at the end of the trip was so traumatizing, it would take him nearly 10 years to get back on a plane.
Some of the overhead compartments even rattled open. Things were being thrown about. People were being thrown around, forward, back, left, right. The flight ended up being the worst flight of my life, and it was dark and turbulent. And people were screaming. Other people, were crying and, oh my. And then I started getting nervous. I said, okay, if all these other people are nervous, it's not just me. I look over at my dad, and my dad, he was in the Army and had been on planes and what have you. He was calm.
Joe survived, however, his confidence didn't. His fear of flying was intense.
I would get anxious just even the thought about flying. Even going to an airport to pick up a relative or a family, I would say, how could these people just get into this plane like it's nothing? Obviously missed family vacations. I missed weddings. I missed traveling back to Italy where I have family, which I had done before that flight. I would fly to Italy, I would fly to Sicily, I would fly all over the country. So yes, for 10 years, it stopped me. And basically I was limited to places that I could drive to.
10 years after that frightful flight, Joe had enough. He got engaged and promised his fiancée he would face his fear of flying.
I said I am going to go to Italy on my honeymoon, and I'm going to beat this. I need to figure out how to finally fix this fear of flying. You'll never live if you're too afraid to die.
Joe credits Captain Tom Bunn, a retired Air Force pilot who was flown with United Airlines and before that the now defunct Pan Am Airlines, for helping him face his fears. Bunn is the co-creator of SOAR, a behavior modification program to help millions of people who suffer from aerophobia, which is a fear of flying.
It's built into us to fear falling. Even you take a little kid, they do an experiment they call virtual cliff. They have a table. The kid can crawl around it, like a 1-year-old, 1.5-year-old kid. No problem. They take the table and extend it with a piece of plexiglass. Kid looks through, won't go out over it. So it's built into us.
When your plane hits turbulence, it can feel like you're falling. Pilots often describe turbulence like hitting a pothole when you're driving.
Y'all all right back there?
The only difference is you're thousands of feet in the sky.
You have control of the plane. You know that no matter how much turbulence Mother Nature can create, the plane can handle multiples of that. Safety, it's not a problem. Emotionally, that's a different story. When you get enough stress hormones, you lose the ability to know the difference between what's real and what's imaginary. And so if you imagine the plane falling out of the sky, you can really believe that it is.
While turbulence may be scary, it rarely results in injury. According to the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, 2 million people fly every day, but on average, only about 58 people are injured each year. As a result, it's usually because the passengers weren't wearing their seatbelts. But all of the reassuring statistics in the world don't matter, because as the captain says, fear of flying creates a different reality.
Let's pretend like this is our first session. What's the first thing you're going to tell me?
Well, the first thing is that you're probably going to think that you've tried so hard at this that nothing will work. But it's not about being able to control things, which is what everybody tries to do when there's an anxiety issue. What we need to do is to be able to let go of control and still be calm. And for that, we need to link to two things: a memory that produces a hormone that interferes with the release of stress hormones. And the other thing is to link to the face and voice and touch of a person who's calming to you.
So you want me to think of someone who's calming to me? Well, since my wife is probably watching this, I'll think of her.
I usually suggest people don't do that.
Really? Why?
Well, because you kind of want to please her, and she's kind of invested in whether you succeed at this or not. I kind of think you're better off if you think about somebody who's a buddy who doesn't really care whether you fly or not.
So not my mom?
I don't know your mom. You could try her. But what we know is, actually there is a time when you could use your wife. If you go to the memory of a time when you got engaged, why? Because that's the time in a relationship when you're totally accepted. A year later, maybe not. So what we're looking for is a moment with her or a friend. See, it's easier with a friend. They accept you pretty much still. So when you're with a person where you're physically safe and psychologically safe, signals come from their face, their voice quality, and their body language would actually slow your heart rate, slow your breathing rate, and relax the gut.
The captain also encourages his clients like Joe to take an active role in planning for their trip.
I'll ask the flight attendant if I can speak to the captain, or sometimes they'll even let the captain know before I board, and he'll welcome me into the cockpit. I'll ask them, hey, how's the weather look today? Delta will pull up their app and they'll say, here's what we have planned, here's our route, here's where the storms are. Should be a pretty smooth flight, or we may hit a couple bumps here or there. You know, their confidence that they exude and how it's so routine for them, and they hang up their jacket and their hat. They're going through their checklist and everything is very systematic how they do it. They're just calm, cool, collected. So it gives you that same feeling. So now you take your seat and you let them worry about doing their job, because it's not yours to fly the plane.
The captain says how you cope with turbulence will vary based on your age and how often you fly. If you find yourself looking at a flight attendant's reaction like I do, well, you're not alone.
When you get a shot of stress hormones, for any reason, it's kind of an alert that something's going on, and you want to see, is what's going on safe or not? So you look for information. That's the only source of information you have. If you're in the cockpit, it would be totally different. I don't think people would have trouble with turbulence in the cockpit. You could see the plane's not running into anything, everything, if you look at the instrument panel, everything's steady, or you could just look at the pilot. But in the cabin, the only source of information you've got is the flight attendant's reactions.
So I might identify an anxious passenger. So after boarding, I might go over to them privately and say, hey, are you an anxious flyer? And if they say yes, then I might tell them, listen, reassure them in a way that we have excellently skilled pilots and flight crew.
Even though the mask mandate was lifted on April 18th of 2022, many still elect to wear face masks.
Let's say you're with a person who has a calming effect on you. And some of that calming effect comes from what you see right in this area. If that area is covered, you're not picking up the good signals. Since we do pick up signals from other people around the face, we're not picking up signals if they're wearing a mask that give us a sense that we're safe with them.
I met with Captain Tom, I talked to him, went through all his steps and the program he had put together. I said, okay, I'm going to pick a flight that's far enough, but it's still over land. So I picked California because it would be a 6-hour flight versus going to Italy, which would be 8 and over water. And I said, okay, if the program doesn't work, I can just drive back.
Knowledge is power in the sense, in my opinion, to give you permission to do something that you might otherwise think is dangerous. Like, I don't want to get rid of my fear of motorcycles. I just as soon as keep that one. But I know that being on an airplane is safer than driving a car.
Joe did get on the plane and flew more than 5 hours to Los Angeles.
Was it relief? Were you anxious? What was going through your mind at that point when you touched down and you got to the gate for the first time?
It was a sense of accomplishment and pride, and just extremely happy that I was finally able to, with his help, break something that had kept me in a bubble.
So if Joe can face his fear of turbulence, I can face mine.
All right, do you want to go back and land on that runway?
Yes, let's do that.
Coming up, I get my chance to land a plane in a flight simulator.
So much harder than I thought.
All right, I'm going to steer on the ground for you. Nice job.
Sorry.
Nice job.
Oopsie.
The Fox Weather app.
Make sure your Fox Weather notifications are on.
So much more than a forecast. Always accessible.
You need to be watching and making sure that you are prepared.
We got a whole lot to talk about with this system.
Lightning fast. Cutting edge. And best of all, tailored to your location and your needs.
We have several days to watch this.
Precise, personal, powerful. Fox Weather. Download the app now and make it your own.
Turbulence is something that many people fear, but it's something that pilots encounter every single day. It's part of the reason why I'm now going to head into the Delta simulation to see, one, how they train, and two, if I can hold up as a pilot. Delta's chief pilot, Lord Lucas Edwards, says the airline does have a few tricks to stay ahead of Mother Nature, including what's on this iPad.
This is Widget Weather, and this is a proprietary app that we developed here at Delta that takes forecasted turbulence reports and actual atmospheric measurements and combines them into a tool that we can use real time every single time that we go fly. And we like to use this at the beginning of a flight when we're briefing the flight attendants on what we can expect en route, so they can kind of see visually where the turbulence is going to occur. For example, this is a flight from Seattle to Atlanta. You can see here that we might encounter some turbulence, and it looks like just light turbulence based on the color around Wyoming. So they have an idea of how long they need to complete their service prior to getting to that weather, and that we'll want them seated somewhere in this point as we try to deviate and maybe go around this area of turbulence. So this is an app that we use every single time that we go fly.
The captain says she understands why some fear turbulence.
You can't really see in front of you. You're sitting back there in the cabin, and all of a sudden you feel these small jolts to the airplane, and you don't know what's causing it. And you're kind of a little bit out of control in that situation, or at least you feel like that.
But it's when it's unexpected. She showed me exactly what's happening in the cockpit. We're flying right now, we're flying about, and next thing you know, you're just starting to feel a few bumps. So what's going through your mind right now?
Yeah, so if I start to feel some bumps that I did not expect, I'm starting to think the ride is not what we anticipated. So I'll start looking at my tablet to see what the forecast is for the ride out in front of me, see if there's anything there. I'll ask ATC if they have any pilot reports of turbulence at our altitude, or if they have a smooth ride somewhere. And I'll also give a call to the flight attendants and talk to them and see how it feels back in the cabin. Sometimes it feels a little bit different back there than it does up here. And if we need to turn the seatbelt sign on, we'll get the seatbelt sign on and make sure everybody's seated.
Do you by any chance know how long the turbulence is going to last as you're going through something like this, which is clear air turbulence?
So if it's unexpected, I don't know exactly how long it's going to last. That's where I have to expand my team and talk to ATC to see what the ride reports out in front of me are. But yeah, I do want to get that time frame, and those tools that we have on the tablet as well are going to show me where that turbulence is forecasted to end. So I can use that and ATC to kind of formulate that plan.
One of the most difficult times to encounter turbulence is during a landing. During this simulation, we're landing at New York's JFK Airport as thunderstorms are approaching in the distance. Thunderstorms have downdrafts, which are huge gusts of wind that can push the airplane downward hundreds of feet within a few seconds. Under severe conditions, the plane may crash. It's exactly what happened in Dallas, Texas on August 2nd, 1985. As the plane was trying to land, it flew through a thunderstorm. Seconds before landing, the plane encountered a microburst, a huge gust of downward wind. According to the National Weather Service, the plane crashed just short of runway 17L, striking a car on State Highway 114, killing the driver and 134 people on board. The deadly crash had led the FAA to mandate that, quote, all commercial airliners have the capability to detect low-level wind shear. So right now, what are you watching?
So right now I'm flying the airplane. I am watching the glide slope, the localizer. I am watching my airspeed. I'm looking for any fluctuations. Anytime there's wind shear advisories in effect, you're looking for fluctuations in your speed, in your pitch, and making sure your engine parameters are normal where they should be. And you can see the storm as well over on the other side of New York.
But the captain decides it's not safe to land the plane and aborts the landing.
All right, there's wind shear, autopilot's coming off, going toga power.
As we start to pull back, the skies become more ominous. The plane ride gets more turbulent due to wind shear. It's when the wind changes direction and speed as you get higher. And after a few minutes, the flight smooths out.
The wind shear indication has gone away. There's 1,000 feet. I'm coming back to climb power. I'm going to bring the nose down. And we're going to start cleaning up. So we've got positive rate. If you'll go ahead and bring the gear up for me right there. Pull out and up. There you go. And then we're above our flap retraction speed.
Now it's my turn to land the plane. and this time the storm has moved away.
It's going to do a countdown like 50, 40, 30, 20. That's when we want to start thinking about what's called flaring.
Okay.
And you're going to look at the end of the runway, and you're just going to take the stick, and it's just a barely pull back. Try to pull back just a little bit. Like 3 degrees per second is what we call it. So it's very, just like that.
Just like that, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll walk through it, okay?
Okay, I'll try not to crash the plane.
I think you'll do just fine. Let me
Okay.
get you all hooked up here. All right, we'll let it settle out for just a second. So the autopilot's on. All right, hold on 1 second. It's catching up here. All right, give it just a second. I'll tell you when we can disconnect, okay? Just want it to be nice and stable for you. All right, go ahead, disconnect that autopilot by pushing that red button right there on your thumb twice.
1,000.
All right, you're flying. You can see the flight director in front of you, and you can see you got 2 white and 2 red, so that means you're right on glide path. Might need to make a small correction, bring the nose up just a little bit. Just very small, bring the nose up just a little bit.
Is that enough?
Keep coming a little bit. See how you got 3 red and 1 white?
Oh, yeah.
Now come just a little bit to the left, not a lot, just a little bit to the left.
Oh, I see.
There we go. Now bring that nose down. You've got your glide path again, so bring it down just a little bit. There we go. Coming back on the center line.
500.
Correct it back to the right just a little bit and keep that nose coming down. You want to put that right about on that dash.
So much harder than I thought. Oh boy.
Keep it coming down and a little bit to the right. Keep that nose coming down. A little bit to the right.
A little bit to the right.
Yeah, we want to get on the center of that runway.
Okay.
Minimum.
All right. Just a little bit of a left correction.
Okay.
All right, you're doing good. Here's that 100. Start looking at the end of the runway. Bring it back to the left a little bit. Start bringing that nose up. Bring that nose up.
20. Retard.
Power's back. Now just hold it.
10.
All right, I'm gonna steer on the ground for you. Nice job.
Sorry.
Nice job.
Oopsie.
There we go. We got the reversers out.
Well, clearly, I need to stick to weather.
That's your first time ever flying a jet, right?
Yes.
That was actually a pretty good landing. It was actually pretty good.
I've taken off, but I've never landed. Okay.
All right. I'm gonna stop it for you straight on the runway.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New York's JFK Airport. I apologize for a little bit of the bumps there, but yeah.
There you go.
Thanks everybody for flying with us. Appreciate it.
That was awesome.
Awesome. That would be the word the kid on the stoop in South Ozone Park, Queens would have used to describe the experience. I was finally able to live my childhood dream of flying an airplane, sort of. And more importantly, to face my fear of turbulence and overcome it. Whenever I fly in the future, I know I will be putting my confidence in the hands of the engineers, pilots, and flight attendants dedicated to getting me safely to my next destination, no matter where that may be.
I'm Amy Freeze. Welcome to Fox Weather's YouTube page. We have more great videos on the way, so make sure to subscribe to stay updated on all things weather.